everybody, it's Stephen Burrell here, and welcome to Now and Men, the podcast on men, masculinities, and gender equality.
Yes, hello everyone, it's Sandy Ruxton here too, and today we're bringing you a special bonus episode to explore the fallout from Spain's victory at the Women's Football World Cup and the subsequent actions of the Spanish Football Federation president, Luis Rubiales. And we thought it was important to explore in more depth the Spanish context, the wider implications for gender equality, and as part of this, of course, what we know about the reactions of men to what has happened.
Yeah, and so we're therefore delighted to have with us a prominent pro-feminist activist in Spain, Hilario Sáez Méndez. Avid listeners to our podcast will remember that we recorded our episode 6 at a men's march in Sevilla against violence towards women, which Hilario played a leading role in organising. He's also a sociologist, the president of the Social Initiative Foundation, and is actively involved in the Men's Network for Equality and the MenEngage Iberia network. So thank you so much for coming on the show, Hilario.
Well, thank you for inviting me to this podcast that I am a fan of.
Well, I mean, just to start off with, I suppose it's important to remember, isn't it, through all of this, that actually, well, first of all, that the tournament was amazing and so entertaining, and that there was a fantastic achievement by the Spanish women's team in winning the World Cup for the first time. And I guess one of the sad things about this whole fiasco is that it's taken the spotlight away from the success of these amazing women players. So yeah, perhaps could you just start off with just telling us a little bit about how the team's actual victory was received in Spain?
Well, you know that nowadays you've got one historic game every weekend. So perhaps you might think that the victory of the Spanish team was not that important, but it was important, at least not only in the sport field, but also in the social field. In the sport field, there has been quite a big growth of women playing football, and we have had some big sport clubs bringing their women's team also in a Spanish league. But really, the Spanish team was only the third time that came into this World Cup. So that they were able to beat England, that was the one that all people was expecting to win, had so this attention. There was people gathering in Madrid and all over the country to see the match. That after we have had up to 70,000 people watching football between the National Cup. So in some way, it was the first time that women's sport had not as much, but quite a good amount of attention from the whole country. And in that sense, it was a pity that we've been talking all the time about this behavior of a man instead of the victory of women. But I must say that the big victory, the real historic victory, is the one that they have won outside the sport field against this male chauvinism, because that is really historic in that sense.
Yes, and I guess presumably the success in the World Cup kind of enabled them, gave them a platform to be able to really shine a spotlight on these issues. Of course, we will also gloss over the fact that it was England who were beaten in the final. But yeah, we would have liked to have spent lots more time dwelling on the achievements of the team and the tournament as a whole. But perhaps we should move on swiftly to the kind of main controversy of what happened afterwards. So for listeners who are unfamiliar with the details, at the end of the final, when Spain had beaten England 1-0, during the trophy presentation ceremony, Luis Rubiales kind of bear-hugged every one of the Spanish players as they collected their medals. And then he grabbed one of the players, the striker Jenni Hermoso, and kissed her on the lips. And in addition to that as well, at the end of the match, he celebrated by grabbing and kind of thrusting his crotch just meters away from the Queen of Spain and her 16-year-old daughter, who he was sitting next to. And of course, all of this was being recorded on live television across the world. And And then, so as it became apparent what had happened in the days afterwards, members of the Spanish government and other people, both within and beyond football, started publicly voicing their criticism of Rubiales' behaviour. Yeah, so could you perhaps take it from there, Hilario, about, why was it, in your view, that this did so quickly lead to these significant protests which we've seen against violence against women in Spain and kind of expressions of solidarity for the women's team?
Yes, the timing is important. I think that the first people to come out and to point that that was something really I wouldn't find the words that you used to show what he was doing, holding his crotch, and this grabbing and kissing was really something that very obvious of a behavior that was not something that could be taken as normal. So there were few people at the beginning that came out and pointed that was talking about the kiss and said it was unconsented, that there was no consent on that kiss. And you have to remember that we have a big discussion about this law of the law of yes is only yes, which had to do with consent. So the fact that that was done in that way made that more people came and started to point that that was an inconvenient behavior on the part of this president, which who was already very polemic. But the big role, the big movement, the big way of protesting against that came when he gave a speech in 2 days afterwards, or on Friday the next week, when he really did a male chauvinist performance from the beginning to the end. Actually, many of us are using that speech to show how what we call here machista behaves, and it was so obvious that the whole I would say most people in the country, even the people that normally don't get into these questions, pointed out as really inconvenient. And it is after that that this movement comes, because Jenny, the player, said that she didn't don't, consent to that kiss, and from there on, there has been a big movement under the hashtag SeAcabó.
It seems like some of this fits into a longer pattern as well, doesn't it? So, it's not the first time that the women's national team have had to protest about the treatment they've received from the football authorities, is it?
No, no, it isn't. And it actually, if you don't take the context into the scene, you might think that this can be taken only as a sexual aggression, but it's not actually a sexual aggression, it's a sexist aggression, because there was for a year ago there was a problem with 15 women that came out that protested because they were having problems with the trainer, with the manager, and with this president. 15 of them renounced to come to the World Cup. They had previously tried to make to find better condition for women's players, and he had reacted really sort of bossy and quite aggressive to her, and the attention has set on the kiss, on the unconsented kiss, which is something that had to the
Yeah.
problem is the focus has been set on the sexual aggression because of the law and the big discussion that we have been having about this law that we can go into later. But it actually has to do with a way of putting in their places these women and telling them that the winner, we have won, meaning the federation have won this game, and that they have to obey now by the laws and the mandates that they are putting through. So it's more a case of a couple of a It reminds me more of the kiss of in Godfather, kissing the brother to
Mm,
say you are dead,
mm,
than just a sexual approach. And in that sense, when he behaves in this way, denying that he had behaved in that way, saying that it was a way of provoking this, because she took him, she had
mm,
hacked him first. When saying that he's a good father and a good son, and blaming feminism because of
mm,
false feminism, explaining to the people, men
mm,
explaining to the people what feminism is in this speech. When he does that, uh, there is a reaction of these women saying enough is enough, and that's what
mm,
this SeAcabó means.
mm.
uh,
Right.
and this enough is enough is something which is quite new for me,
Mm,
from the women's reaction until now. We have seen these women were girls 10 years ago, when there was this march against gender violence in Spain, or the strike, and women's strike in the 18, or this manada attack in Pamplona. And these are the girls that came out saying we are not afraid. We are not afraid.
mm,
And they really are not anymore afraid of male chauvinism. And this call not to allow them to be pushed down anymore has
mm,
really widespread in the whole country, and it's really marvelous.
mm, mm. No, it's great, the reaction, isn't it? I mean, because we watched that press conference like other people did, and
Mm,
we're amazed by the sort of brazen and unapologetic behaviour,
yeah.
and the sort of patriarchal performance in
It's
front of our eyes.
definitely.
But I mean, I think you've just been talking about it really. But what do you think this whole furore over football tells us about gender relations and the political context in Spain more broadly, and perhaps masculinity and patriarchal power within that? Do you think it has a wider sort of significance?
Well, of course it has. I mean, uh, football is sanctuary of masculinity at this moment. That's why, in some sense, there has been such a wide discussion in the country, because and internationally, because people that normally only talk about football, they don't talk about this sexist behavior. And otherwise, the other way around too, people that are not so much interested in football are aware of this
Mm,
sexist behavior. So there has been a debate that normally we've got about things that are not mainstream or not in the middle of the whole life, but now everyone was talking about that. When you asked me about the relevance of this for women, I started to ask the women in my family what how in which place they played football when they were young. And my
mm,
mother was playing as a forward, and my daughter as backwards. So there has been coming out this discussion in general. But
mm,
football, it's capitalist, neoliberal. What is happening with with the federation in Spain is what has happened before with leagues, champion leagues, and so
mm,
on all over Europe. It's individualist. It's competitive. And it's of course homophobic,
mm,
misogynist, and it's also very hard for men too. The things that women have to bear now is the things that young boys brought from South Africa or South
mm,
Latin America have to feel under this idea of sport, not only football but also football, that are turning to a spectacle. So in that sense, talking about gender equality and gender violence, and sexual violence, when we get into sport. We are getting into the core of what is happening in the whole society. And it is very interesting that we are able to talk to people about that.
I was interested, particularly in what you had to say about homophobia in men's football as well, because one of the positives that one could see in the women's football was many players who were out, gay, proud of their sexuality, and also demonstrating openly care for each other as well in ways that you don't so much see amongst male players. So I think that was one of the positives actually, which was surprising to people about the
Yes,
whole tournament.
there has been a lot of talk about that kind of football that women have brought has to do with values that appeal to the idea of teams and collaboration that in the origins of football was something that had to do much with working class, and that is not something that it's so commercial, so capitalist, so neoliberal. Uh, in other, I myself have some doubts that we are close to see that football can be turned into a cooperative and collaborative feminist experience. But it is very clear to see how the ending of discrimination of women and the way that they bring into the new breath that the new air that they bring into football makes people again feel something that old football used to.
Because I guess as well, it's easy to focus solely on Luis Rubiales, isn't it? But I suppose maybe the point is it is much bigger than him, isn't it? It's about this whole system which is in
Yes.
place, which has meant that he's been able to get to this position and he's been able to stay in this position despite the previous strikes by the players. Obviously, the manager stayed in place, didn't he, Jorge Vilda, despite the fact that the players were complaining about and going on strike about his behaviour last year. And yeah, like even now, I mean, Luis Rubiales has been suspended by FIFA, hasn't he? But only suspended, and there's been no action from UEFA, the European football body, even though he's a vice president. And it seems like there has been a lot of effort to actually protect him, right? So it's not just that he's not just refusing to resign, but actually a lot of people are still protecting him, I guess, aren't they? So maybe it says something about these very masculinized institutions and and how male power is quite entrenched in those, I guess. Yeah.
Well, in this speech he gave, that, as we said, it was a performance of male chauvinism and of patriarchy. He was pointing to the manager and telling him he would raise his wage from. He didn't remember the amount, from perhaps 100,000 to 500,000. Then this sort of behavior that he had already done with all the territorial people that were sitting there to take his apologies. The Spanish Federation is organized in regional federations, and these people have been getting money from this president to sort of run the business. There are lots of quarrels in between different organizations inside football. That is also something very patriarchal. But this guy has up to 15 scandals behind him. You perhaps don't know that he brought this national cup to Arabia Saudi, and to the final was between, I don't remember anymore, Madrid and someone else, perhaps Barcelona, and he has brought that. He got supposedly he's been getting money from that, together with a well-known Spanish player, Piqué. He's also been investigated for other things and has to do with money. Well, it's really a mafia. So in this sense, the case was more the case of a couple kissing people that have to be under them, that someone that was trying to make a sexual advance. Although, of course, it is also a sexual attack, and it is it can be prosecuted under the new law.
Yeah, and I suppose it's important to highlight as well, isn't it? That obviously, this isn't just about Spain either, actually, is it? I mean, you can
Mm.
actually see these same issues coming up in other football and other sporting institutions across the world. I mean, here in England, there's, going into the World Cup, there are issues about the team, not being paid enough. There's been all sorts of different issues in terms of sexual harassment among some of the teams at the World Cup and issues around pay. So this is a global issue, isn't it? But yeah, I was wondering if you could tell us a bit more about this kind of SeAcabó movement. What kind of things has been happening with that? And I suppose some people have described it as Spain's like MeToo moment. And yeah, do you see it like that, or yeah?
Well, it has some, I would say, specific cultural impact that has to do with this machismo, which is perhaps something more Latin than North European or in general. This this way of boasting and being occupying the public space and showing off your virility and shouting a lot and doing what he did in this speech and in the final, sort of holding your buttocks and doing something that at the beginning, when we began to talk to work with men long time ago, we tried to explain them gender inequality, and they couldn't get the idea, and so we tried to tell them that they were confusing gender with genetics, with their bollocks, and equality with touching them. So this idea that you can without any care, produce yourself as one of these male chauvinists has come to an end. In fact, in Spain, and I hope that in the whole Latin world, we will go quite quickly in this direction of you cannot come into a place and tell them things that you were doing before and that now are not anymore accepted. In this sense, what you are talking about now and men in Spain, there is really a change of what you now did and now you cannot do. We have having many YouTubers or people announcing, showing what you could do. You could tell a girl that she was nice in the street. Now you cannot do that. That is harassment. And this new way of being so-called gentleman is quite a change in Spain. Comes from the changes that women have produced. They will not accept that as something that they have to take and not say anything. So that would be something specific in Spain. But I think there is a change that goes beyond Me Too movement. It's this tag, SeAcabó, which has a new grammar. It's people, of course, there are women that are taking their words and they are saying something to the world. But if Me Too is something that is said between women, it's a woman telling the other Me Too, and calls for sorority and solidarity among women. This is a message direct to men. This has come to an end, and that turns the attention from one side to the other. That means that now we will see that we will need something like a Me Too for men, but on the other side round, a You Too. Uh, Many men haven't been able to say anything about this. In my opinion, in this time, more because they are afraid and speechless than because they are accepting that. In fact, there's now a survey coming out, and 75% of the people say that what this Rubiales did is not acceptable. Uh, and it is even a majority in the right wing parties. So it must be. I don't have the numbers to know what the proportion of men and women, but it's so general that it is being a majority everywhere.
Mm.
Now,
Mm.
the thing is that we will see that many men will have to think now how to stand about these behaviors that perhaps will go on being done privately, but there we have the problem of telling men how to behave. There is an example that might be easier to make you understand what I'm trying to say. Cadiz football team. It's known to have supporters from very left wing. They have been pushing the team to come out and say something. What did they say? They come out with a sign saying, "We are all Jenny." Of course, we are not all Jenny. We are all Rubiales, and that's the problem. That what the women are telling us is that mind your Rubiales, take care of it and change it. And that is a change of the scenario for me. And it is very interesting because that goes beyond this specific machismo and comes to all spheres and will appeal all the players and all the young girls that have been having to put up with trainers that have abused them, or bosses or
Mm.
male uh, companions at work, or students, and and that I think that is a new, a very
Mm.
interesting development of this SeAcabó movement.
Mm. I know you said a minute ago that you didn't have numbers from that survey about men and women's reactions, but I wondered if you wanted to comment on the reactions of different groups of men,
Yeah.
according to race or class or region or sexuality, or is there anything that one can say about that?
Yes. Well, I don't have numbers from a poll, but the impression is that the reaction, the general reaction, if I would describe it, it is men, including myself, have become speechless, which is the best sign of feminist. I think that's the dream of all feminists, to take the words from our mouth and make us think what the hell is happening here. Of course, the way that some of us have stayed silent are different in different sectors. Traditional men, which are close to the right wing men, have felt that he actually went too much farther away than you should do publicly. It was so evident that many men, even from these traditional sectors, have felt themselves that they could not be identified with this guy. But they weren't able to come out and say anything. But when asked, they tend to say, well, that is not something to do with feminism or machism. That is something to do with that man. People from the men from the more progressive sectors have felt, myself included, that we have not speak quick and clear enough. We are actually preparing a congress on football and gender violence. We've got a program in my organization, this foundation, which is local room talk. We brought from Sweden, that we are doing in colleges and everywhere. So we want to make this congress about this discussion, because we knew that we have to get into the football scenery. But when that happened, it was so obvious that so many men had been speechless, had said nothing against this, had accepted that as normal, that one feels that one better stay, hears what the women are saying.
Mm.
Afterwards, all men, all kinds of men have been coming out and saying, I don't agree with that. Every time, every day, there is a football player saying that. Today, there was one of the well-known Spanish football players saying that he doesn't agree with what this Rubiales did. But there is still not the reflection, the personal reflection of how much of Rubiales is there in you, and what do you should be changing not to be a Rubiales. And I think that that should be the next step. And for that, we need a feminist agenda on men and masculinity, a way of talking from feminism to men and saying what type of changes we are expecting from masculinities. Not only that we as men have enjoyed and used for our privileges, but this dominant masculinity that is also being offered as a model for women, for football player also. So in that sense, it is very important what from the side of organizations like MenEngage can be done at this moment.
My sense is that Spain is relatively unusual in having, a small but relatively strong, politically active, pro-feminist men's movement. Epitomised, as you say, by MenEngage Iberia and the network that you've built up that you're part of. How have the network been able to respond? I think you
Well,
produced a statement, didn't you?
yes, we issued a statement quite quickly, and I'm quite satisfied on what we did. We have to do more, and we have to do more with the alliance, with the global alliance, because we need the international pressure to go on. And in that sense, I wanted to thank you to bring this topic into your podcast, because we still need to go on pressing. Otherwise, perhaps Rubiales will go out of office, but Rubialism, to call it that way, machism
Right,
will stay on. It's the vice president
right.
is now become the president. All the people at the communication staff that try to pressure this woman are still there and will be still be there. The two national managers, trainers are still in post, and they had abide by this position of the president. So we need to make more pressures and go beyond FIFA ideas of taking away these exceptions as they think, and keeping these structures that are out of control and they can be used for more capitalist neocolonial way of football. So I think we've got to go on there. The thing is to be able to talk to these women and to produce changes in law that allow the minds of these women to be taken into account. There's only one woman in the whole stage of the federation. I'm afraid it will be the same in all sports around the world. So you need to bring in more women to posts, and there had to be more ways of preventing mistreatment, and in general also with boys and men, which are quite extended. When we talk about first line sports stars, like for instance this tennis player, which is now a very young guy, he would say that he needed head, heart, and buttocks to explain what he needs to be a winner. In fact, he's playing more than he should for his health. Uh, they are being exploited more than any idea of exercise and care should take into account. So all this reflection has to come there. All that we are talking about caring outside football has to be brought into the discussion, and we should do more there. And I think we should try among us to uh, open the debate how this has to be said.
Yeah, well, I think that's such a good point as well that you highlight there, because of course this culture, this macho culture, in the end is actually very harmful for men as well, isn't it? So creating change in the end is beneficial for everyone. One thing that I was thinking as well, based on what you were saying, I do think the footage of Rubiales' speech is very powerful, isn't it? Because of the fact that everybody claps, and I feel like that is such a good illustration of men's, because it is predominantly men in this hall, isn't it, listening to him speak, because as you said, there's only a few women in the football federation, and all these men are just clapping along with this unbelievable speech he's just given, including the manager of the women's team, the manager of the men's team, these men who are supposed to be leaders, but they're all just clapping. And I think it's a very, unfortunate and powerful demonstration of that kind of complicity and that silence of men, isn't it? Which you were talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. The whole speech and the stage of that audience will be used by all the people that are working with masculinity in Spain.
Yeah.
All of
Yeah.
us are saying, "Oh my God, look at that! Look at that!" It's really a performance of masculinity. It's
Yeah.
difficult to have that so clear, but.
Yeah.
You know that we made this march in Sevilla under the slogan "Silence make us accomplice." Uh, we had already done a new sort of slogan, a new call that meant "Machismo is violence." You don't have to hit and to batter at anyone to exert violence. Something was that was something that was not clear in Spain and was just taken as a joke or as a micro machist behavior. That is what has come in general to the idea of men that you cannot now do that, and that demands a change, which is something we have to think about, because if it is only being put as this accusing, punitive discourse against men. If we are imagining that the end of this match is that the women's team will win the men's team, we are not changing things. Perhaps we are very far away of this idea of having teams that are not divided into men and women. But we can now talk of how men can engage in the changes that women are producing, also in football and in sport, where men are really interested and working. And in that sense, I think that we that have been working for that a long time now have the chance of trying to introduce our view of a feminist agenda on men and masculinities. It's something that now we are feeling the push. We are being called everywhere from everybody to do things with men now because of these changes that women are making to happen. So I think that in that sense, it's a very good time to be here and to go on working on this line.
Yeah, it actually makes me think a little bit about the situation in the UK as well. And I feel like there's a lot of change happening, isn't there, in gender relations? Like,
Yes.
what you were talking about, the impact, on men, for example, because there was a very high profile murder here a couple of years ago of a
Mhm.
woman called Sarah Everard. And I think it had that similar effect that you're describing. And of course, this isn't, as you said, this isn't, there's been lots of developments going on in recent years, such as the introduction of this new law. After this horrific La Manada Wolfpack case in Pamplona in 2016, there was also a movement then called Cuéntalo or Tell It, of
Yes.
women really challenging, like, men's violence against women and sexual violence. And so it led to the introduction of this law, only yes means yes, under which, consent must be freely given and cannot be assumed by default or by silence. So it seems like there's a lot of change going on in Spanish society. And yeah, I mean, you've been involved in this kind of pro-feminist, anti-violence movement for a long time. I mean, does it really feel like things are shifting in a significant way for you
Yes, it
because of these
does.
things?
Yes, definitely, definitely, and it's something that really one is grateful to being part of it, because it's something that I actually didn't expect anymore. And this change is happening now, and it's very intense. This law, which is actually a message that goes not only for Spain but for the whole Europe. It's just putting into action of the Istanbul Convention, and the change is very important, because it comes from the idea that consent has to be not only negative but active. It's not that you have to say no when you are being abused, but that they have to ask you, and you have to say yes actively, to accept any type of sexual relationship. That changes the match. That changes the way, because until now we have been having to prove that women did all that they could not to be abused or raped or whatever. But now what is happening, and what is happening to this man, to this Rubiales, is that it's him that has to prove that he asked and he took the measures to feel and to make clear that she was consented. And that's why he's saying that he asked her when he obviously didn't. He was confessing that it was in a moment of euphoria because of of winning, in which you really don't can't believe that someone asked another person, shall we have a peck? Is that something? Shall we kiss? Is that something that he did normally with this girl, or with the people from the staff? It is obvious something that he's inventing. He's using as a alibi, preparing his defense against this a law that now makes him having to prove that he tried to obtain the consent from this woman, and this changes the relationship of power, which is had to do with gender. So this that is now being introduced and put in the middle of society through football in Spain shall have to be done at the European level. That is not being used. And in the same way that we are contributing in this debate, what happened in England, Britain, with this research on the police and the institutions, uh, it's something that I feel that we missed here very much in Spain, because much of the problem that we have with the law and the quarrel that was used in the elections here in Spain to favor the right wing had to do that with the fact that judges were applying the law without this knowledge of difference between active or passive consent. And they did that not because they didn't have the theoretical knowledge, but because there is a part of police and judges that simply don't want to make the changes happen. So I think that it is from these international networks that can be seen in every time a place what the better solution to the problems we have in each country. That we have to work local in this sense, and I hope that we are able to do that in the future, because it's a relevant contribution to feminism.
So do you feel, just lastly, do you feel optimistic about, the positive impact that the women's team winning the World Cup could have beyond just that match, beyond football, in terms of its impact on men, on society? Do you feel hopeful about the future?
Well, as I was brought up in a very machist society, uh, many of the things that are happening were simply not really thinkable when I was a young man. Seeing young girls coming out of on the streets after this brutal group rape that was happening in Pamplona, calling out and say that we are not afraid, we are not afraid. The night is also ours. For me, who has I do have two girls of that age. It's really something very moving. It's very hopeful. Of course, I'm not saying that from this movement on there won't be any more sexual abuse, or even that it will be more difficult sometimes to spot it and to point it out, because many men will now learn to do without this boasting public attitude the same things that they have done at work, at family, or at the sport. But just seeing that this way of taking the protagonism in everything, even on the time that a team of women wins the World Cup, and that we, at least for a time, stay speechless, is for me something that really makes me feel that we will go on, and that we have to go on this line, because yes, it's not only the changes in gender, it's the changes in general. We have not talked about the Spanish context, but it's something that you've got to take into it. Just 2 months ago, there was a local elections, and the right wing was coming, won by a lot new governments around all the regional governments. What the new governments that have taken into office have been doing about gender has been decisive to produce well a movement in the left, and vote against the possibility that we had now a very right wing party. So in that sense, it's not only with feminism, it's not only the men's movement, it's also all that's had to do with the changes in ecology, in peace, in equality in general, for society. And I think it shows us the way that can be done. Of course, it's feminism what is carrying the day, but it's a long way to equality, and for me at this moment, what has happened, it's enough to say that it has been a great victory of this Spanish women's team.
Absolutely. Oh, well, thank you so much, Hilario.
Okay, take care.
Wow, what a powerful conversation with Hilario. I'm glad you're back with us, Sandy. Sorry that you dropped out for a few minutes there.
Yeah, sorry about that, folks.
So, I mean, yeah, we'll just briefly just sum up here, because this is just a special kind of extra episode, so we won't hang around for long. But I think it's just important, isn't it, Sandy, to kind of perhaps just reflect again about how inspiring and amazing and powerful the actions of the Spanish women's team have been, really. You know, the fact that so many have gone on strike and refused to play again until things change, you know, that's potentially really costly and damaging for their careers. There's a huge sacrifice there, isn't there? And I think taking that kind of action is just very inspiring, and I hope, you know, more men speak out and join them in that level of action and solidarity, I guess.
Yeah, and I was struck by what he had to say about the fact that, you know, these young women have grown up during a period in which gender relations have been really, you know, under the microscope in Spain, really, and you know, been there when some of these discussions have taken place around MeToo, SeAcabó, and you know, and so on, and actually they get this stuff, you know, they understand this stuff, and they are quite challenging in a way that maybe they wouldn't have been, you know, even 20 years ago. So I find that's quite powerful. And the other thing I just wanted to mention was when he talked about the example of the Cadiz team, and they had said, you know, we're all Jenni Hermoso, and he said what they should say is we're all Rubiales. And that to me encapsulates, you know, the notion that actually men need to look at their own responsibilities in this regard. And it's about time they did.
Yeah, absolutely. This is such a powerful case to which we could all reflect on in that regard, I think, isn't it? Yeah. But yeah, we should probably stop there for this episode. But hopefully we'll be back with another one soon. So in the meantime, as always, do subscribe to Now Men if you haven't done so already. Share it with your friends and colleagues. And thank you so much for listening.
Thank you.
Bye.